Hey everyone, welcome to this Developing with OpenXR tutorial series. My name is Runberg, and by day I work with Valve Software in developing SteamVR and their OpenXR implementation as an independent software developer based here in Queenstown, New Zealand. Please note, however, this tutorial series is not in any way, shape, or form affiliated with Valve. So with that in mind, let's get right to it. So what is OpenXR? OpenXR is an open standard application programming interface that allows for developers to create both virtual as well as augmented reality applications. It is cross-platform, that is, it works with SteamVR, Meta, HTC runtimes, as well as Monado for Linux. The main goal of OpenXR is to simplify XR development by providing a unified interface to all of these different platforms as well as devices. It was developed by the Kronos group, who also made OpenGL as well as Vulkan. In fact, we're going to be using a Vulkan renderer specifically made for this tutorial series that you can reuse for your own applications. While powerful, the OpenXR API can be quite fiddly to quickly get up and running on. This is one of the motivations for the creation of the OpenXR Provider Library, which is what we will be using in this OpenXR development series. The OpenXR Provider Library provides a simpler interface for C++ developers mainly to use the OpenXR API. And as mentioned, I've also added a completely optional Vulkan-based, physically based rendering module, which we'll be using to implement fully working VR applications in this tutorial series. In the next video, we will cover in detail how to obtain and build the source code from its repository in GitHub. But first, I'd like to cover some of the prerequisites you need in your development environment. While you can build and code the provider in Linux, I'll be focusing on using Windows for this series. First off, you'll need the latest version of Microsoft Visual Studio. And in this video, we'll also look at the optional modules you need during the installation process. You'll need Python 3. This is primarily so that we can build the OpenXR SDK itself from scratch. Git, which is our code versioning tool, as well as Git-LFS, so you can download larger binary files, such as the Blender source art assets used in some of the demos. And of course, we'll need the Vulkan SDK for the renderer. And for building for Android devices, you will need both the Android Studio as well as the latest copy of the MetaQuest SDK. So if you have all of these already set up in your development machine, feel free to go on to the next video. Otherwise, you can also freely skip portions of the next few minutes of this video to jump ahead to prereqs that you might not have yet. All right, let's get to it. All right, so first up, we'll download Visual Studio. The Community Edition should be fine for this. Once downloaded, just run the setup file. During installation, just make sure that you've selected under workloads the desktop development with C++. And under individual components, check that you have the latest build tools for C++. And that's all we need for Visual Studio. Next up, we have Python 3. Just download the setup file from the official website, run it, and make sure that you add the python.exe to Windows path, then install. Next, open up the registry editor. We'll need to enable long path support in Windows. So just go to HT local machine, system, current control set, control, file system, and just look for long paths enable and set that to 1. And that's it for Python. So next up, we'll install Git and Git-LFS. So just head to the official site, download the setup file and run it. And just make sure that the Git-LFS option is ticked so that it will install Git and Git-LFS at the same time. And that's pretty much it for Git and Git-LFS. You can optionally install a Git GUI client. Personally, I prefer GitKraken, but you could use any other Git client that you prefer. Next up, we have CMake. So this one's fairly straightforward. Just head on to cmake.org downloads, download the installer file, and just run it. And there shouldn't be any other special setting other than just going through the motions of the wizard. Next up, let's install and set up the Vulkan SDK. So just head on to vulkan.lunarg.com and install the Vulkan SDK. The main thing with the setup is just make sure you install the Vulkan Memory Allocator headers as well. And that should be pretty much it for Vulkan. So next up, we have the Android Studio. So just download the setup file and install it. After installation, run Android Studio, go to Projects, SDK Manager, and under SDK Tools, just download the NDK as well as the latest Android SDK. And that's pretty much it for Android Studio. That's all we need to do here. So lastly, we'll download the Oculus OpenXR Mobile SDK. So just agree to the terms and conditions and just keep it on file for now, and we'll use it on the Android building video. And that's all really there is to it to set up a development environment from scratch. So what we've just done is installed all of the prerequisites that we'll need to be able to build for PC, VR, and Windows, as well as Android devices. I'll create a separate video for building in Linux and as well as installing prereqs for it. So that's it for this video on intro and prereqs, and I hope you join me on the next one where we'll actually clone the source code from GitHub and do a quick build. Alright, see you then.